SMU just made their debut in the college football playoff rankings this season. They're at number 21. Hayden, this tees up SMU here to be in if they win their next 2 football games. Huge deal for SMU to get this type of recognition after what really was a weekend and early part of this week of maybe a lot of questions as to whether SMU, not only would they be in this ranking, would they get into at like 25, but how high would they be?
So they debut at 21, but the positive is the ACC has 5 teams ranked in the top 25 now. You're looking at number 12, Miami, and while I think that can rub some people the wrong way of, well, are they overrated? Will SMU beat them in overtime? But ultimately, that is actually a good reflection on SMU's resume. SMU now is holding a top 12 win over another college football playoff bound team as it currently sits. We've all seen the brackets where Miami is sitting in there at number 11. As it sits right now, if SMU wins the next 2 games, SMU will be sitting in that number 11 spot. But, Billy, there are a lot of circumstances that could end up getting the ACC 2 teams. Alabama has a very tough road game at Jordan-Hare Stadium against Auburn on Saturday. We all know how those games have gone in the past. And if Alabama drops one of its next 2 games, so let's say they go and beat Auburn, A&M loses to Texas on Saturday, Bama's in the SEC championship, Georgia Bulldogs get revenge, Bama gets a loss there. That opens the door for the ACC to get 2 teams in. There are lots of scenarios that could really play into the league's favor. I think Texas Tech is essentially a lock in the playoff at this point. They're going to play for a Big 12 championship, in my opinion. I believe they just need a win, same as SMU on Saturday. BYU is also in the driver's seat to go play for a Big 12 championship. I don't think the Cougars beat Texas Tech in the rematch. There would be another top 12 team that would fall out of the playoff. So there's going to be a lot of chaos that's going to unfold over the next couple weeks with week 14 of the college football season, conference championship weekend. But ultimately, we're in a really good spot, not just for SMU, but for the conference as a whole.
And when you look at this college football playoff rankings as a whole, Hayden, this really sets up for the scenario that if there's no drama, if there's no major changes to the rankings, SMU is going to have a first round game at Oregon, which would be quite the road trip for SMU, considering they obviously went all the way out to State College last year. And this year, if they do win out and take care of business, they would be playing the Oregon Ducks, a difficult place to play. Autzen in December, very, very cold place. It would be quite the trip, like I said, for SMU. But here's the thing that we're watching really closely here. If Texas Tech were to lose to a BYU in the championship game, does that move Texas Tech down a spot and move Oregon up? I think that is something to keep an eye on there. I would obviously think that Texas Tech would take care of business against BYU in the Big 12 championship game. But then obviously there could also be that maybe Texas A&M beats Georgia. Does that move Texas Tech into that 4 spot? That's something that I'm also keeping a close eye on with this college football playoff ranking. And Hayden, when you look at these group of teams that SMU could take road trips to, there's really not too much as far as drama I think that we could see as far as watching this unfold in a way that really impacts the number of places that SMU could go and play. I mean, you and I are talking about this off air, and we're sitting there, trying to dial up Status Jet and get our plane ready to go. Of course, we are not doing that, but it would be very nice if somebody did do that with our friends at Status Jet. Get a discount on a round trip flight when you mention on the Pony Express, and they can hook you up with that discount to get you to any of these college football playoff destinations if SMU does make it. And you'll have the flexibility, of course, with them to change things, last minute. If SMU were to face an Ole Miss team, you maybe fly into Oxford or Tupelo or make a trip like that. If SMU faces Texas Tech, that's a quick trip over to Lubbock for some of our friends at Status Jet. But then you get into some of the scenarios of, man, if Texas A&M beats Georgia, how far would Georgia fall? Would they fall all the way to number 6? Would SMU go to Athens? Would Ole Miss, obviously would still probably be behind Georgia in that case because of the head-to-head. how far would some of these teams drop if they suffered losses? Because Ohio State and Indiana, for example, are headed to a Big Ten championship game appearance. So you are going to have the potential of Texas Tech, I think, sliding into that 4 spot if they win the Big 12 championship. And if Ohio State beats Indiana, I don't see them falling out of the top 4, just the way they've played. Texas A&M, the way they've played, if Georgia were to beat them, I don't see them falling out of the top 4. But it could cause some shuffling as a whole as to maybe who is that top 4 with that guaranteed first round bye that really kind of came back to bite some teams last year, no question about it. And they made the changes. But SMU is sitting in a good spot here. I think if you're an SMU fan, you are concerned about going to play Oregon at Oregon. That is a difficult place to play. It's cold. The Ducks have, really been one of the best defensive teams in college football. But I'll also say that maybe that game could play into SMU's favor if it is almost a game where it doesn't necessarily get into a track meet. I don't know. I haven't watched too much of Oregon this year, but when you look at some of the other trips that are on the table right now, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, those are the ones that obviously from an SMU perspective in a warmer weather environment, kind of against teams that you've probably kept an eye on regionally, those are things that a lot of SMU fans would love to see. And plus, you can pretty much drive all of those games in one way or the other. So it could be a good showing for SMU as well on the fan front.
It'd be really cool for any of those games to happen because you were talking about shuffling in the top 4. I really think the shuffling from the 13 spot up is essentially done. I don't really see a Vanderbilt leaping all the way up to the 12th to the really what they would have to be is the 10th best team at this point. They would have to go from 14 to 10. I don't know if there's enough chaos left for that to happen. Now, college football could prove me wrong as we could enter some extreme parity that we've seen already in this year. But you're looking at teams who are just outside Vanderbilt, Michigan, Texas, even all the way down to USC.
Yeah.
And they're certainly going to be playing in good bowl games, but I just think those teams are going to be left on the outside looking in at this year. But you're looking at teams who are even farther down, Virginia, SMU, Pitt, all still alive, 24, Tulane, all who could have an opportunity to go be in the first round of the playoff. That's what's great about the new updated 12-team playoff system. How we would look at it right now would be 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams if it was under the old format. You would have some really great teams in Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, all getting left out on the outside looking in. And this just allows for a greater environment of college football to be present in the first round of the playoffs.
And storylines galore, again, kind of outside of, the Oregon matchup, I feel like, even though there's some Dallas flavor on that Oregon team, but you have Texas Tech, that would be again, you need a little bit of movement. You really would need Tech to lose to BYU in the, Big 12 championship. But then what does that do? Would BYU having a win over top 5 Tech move Alabama out? That would be something. Let's say there's very little chaos. If BYU were to beat Texas Tech, that would probably push them to that spot over Alabama. I would think, right? Like you'd have that type of argument to be had there because you go to your conference championship game, you help yourself that much, and then Tech slides to 6, SMU goes to Lubbock, things like that could happen. Of course, it's all the committee, determining what they want. I mean, that's the thing, you look at them having the conversations that they have to have around Miami and how they pass the eye test and this and that. Like Miami having an opportunity to play ranked Pitt this weekend is probably the only thing helping them, but really they don't have much of a prayer to jump Alabama, I don't think, and to get into this thing. I just don't see it outside of Alabama losing, which you already talked about.
Yep, for sure. Miami having to play 22, I don't think that moves the needle enough for the committee. Hunter Yurachek is now the chair of the committee. Arkansas is athletic director. So there is going to be some SEC bias within the committee, like there has been all year long. However, Alabama getting that last game of the year at Auburn, nothing to lose. Auburn does not have their head coach. They fired Hugh Freeze earlier this year. I don't anticipate that happening, of the tide falling in Auburn, Alabama, but we've seen crazier in that rivalry.
No question. And look, it would not be a crazy scenario for anybody to go up 75 McKinney, grab a new vehicle, so you're all set and ready to go for a drive over to Lubbock, a drive up to Norman, a drive over to Oxford, or just drive to the airport for that flight to Eugene. Make sure you go to the Thomas Auto Group and visit any of their 4 dealerships in McKinney: Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi. Brandon Thomas and his entire team are going to take great care of you. Start getting your big present to yourself or to your significant other or your kid lined up for Christmas if you'd like. You'll get employee pricing when you mention on the Pony Express on new and pre-owned vehicles. So again, go to thomasautogroup.com, browse your selection, then head up 75 to McKinney or down. You know, some of you guys living way up in North Dallas, almost to Oklahoma, you can take 75 down or North Tollway down or wherever and cut over. It's easy to get to. That's the great thing about the Thomas Auto Group. So I'm heading over there actually next Thursday to get some work done on my vehicle. So excited about that. Getting a second key made for the car, actually. Yeah, it did not come with one, apparently. So getting that taken care of as the car shuffle during the holiday season gets ready to get going.